at home for joining us this hour. It's election night. Yay. In states around the country, we've already had some interesting results starting to come in as the first polls start to close. The big kahuna, of course, in terms of national implications tonight is California, where polls close in a couple of hours. Polls close at 11 p.m. Eastern, which is 8 p.m. local time in California. We're going to have coverage throughout the night tonight and into the wee hours here on MSNBC. I hope that you will be here for the duration. Should be a very interesting night. I will be honest with you, though. This is not the way I thought today's news was going to go. It's a big election night. It's a big, complicated election night in lots of ways. There's a whole bunch of high-stakes primaries. There's a whole bunch of interesting storylines you have to understand, particularly about California. Lots of important results we're expecting tonight in terms of who is likely to control Congress as of next year, which is a very important thing. In the midst of that, I did not expect that at 9 p.m. Eastern time, on this night of all nights, I would be reporting on the attempted murder arrest just outside the White House. But this news broke this evening. We've still, frankly, only got quite skeletal details as to what happened here, but I will tell you what we know thus far. Outside the White House today, a man was arrested because there was a warrant out for his arrest in Maryland, in Prince George's County, Maryland. The man who was arrested is 29 years old. He is from Maryland. The reason this story is breaking as national news tonight is because, well, for one, when this man was arrested, it was for a very serious crime. A federal official tells NBC News the warrant was for attempted first-degree murder. More specifically, though, the reason this is national news is because that guy was arrested while he was trying to go to work. And where that guy works is at the Trump White House. We don't know exactly what his job is. NBC News has learned that he did have a White House pass. He was a contractor working at the White House. NBC News has learned that he worked for the National Security Council in some capacity. The National Security Council is the large interagency body that is overseen by the National Security Advisor, who right now is John Bolton. There has been a lot of turnover at the National Security Advisor job, of course. The first one was Mike Flynn, who's now awaiting sentencing on felony charges. Then it was H.R. McMaster. Now it is John Bolton. With each of those new National Security Advisors, we've had tons of turnover in the National Security Council staff. In terms of this guy who was arrested today at the White House, we do not know in what capacity he worked at the National Security Council. Again, he's described as a contractor, but we don't know what his job was, nor do we know why the National Security Council would have been employing someone as a contractor who was actively wanted on an attempted murder warrant. We called the National Security Council tonight to try to get further information about what this man's job was. We wanted to ask in what capacity he worked for the National Security Council and what the circumstances were of how he obtained his White House pass so he could enter the White House grounds. The National Security Council referred all of our questions to the U.S. Secret Service. The U.S. Secret Service are not answering their phone. So again, we are still looking for more information here, but this is a strange story. As of right now, the bottom line is that a 29-year-old man with a White House pass who was apparently working with the National Security Council in some capacity, he was arrested on an outstanding warrant for attempted first-degree murder when he showed up for work at the White House today and attempted to enter the White House grounds. Now, so far, there is no explanation as to what his White House job might have been, but presumably he would still be working at that White House job today had police not decided to act on this outstanding warrant. That's all we know at this point. We will give you more on that story as we learn it. Also today, the White House did finally decide to oust a senior staffer from the White House Communications Department. This is a communications staffer at the White House who became famous a couple of weeks ago when somebody leaked from the White House that during a White House meeting that was called to discuss John McCain's opposition to Trump's new nominee to run the CIA, this communications department official at the White House, her name is Kelly Sadler, reportedly said at that White House meeting about John McCain, quote, "It doesn't matter, he's dying anyway." That was reported weeks ago. It was never denied. There was never an apology either from that White House official or from the White House itself. And Kelly Sadler has stayed on working at the communications office in the White House in a very senior job all this time, ever since it was reported and not denied that that's how she talked about John McCain. I say this is a senior job because this is a senior job. Technically, we're told that she is a special assistant to the president, which means she is a high-ranking White House staffer. Well, to date, with no further explanation, Raj Shah, who's the principal deputy press secretary, he emailed out a statement that said simply, quote, Kelly Sadler is no longer employed within the executive office of the president. No explanation, no lead up to it, no warning that it was going to happen, no elaboration. She is no longer employed within the executive office of the president. Now, of course, that leaves open the possibility that Kelly Sadler left the executive office of the president to instead go work somewhere else in the White House or somewhere else in the administration. As with the guy arrested on attempted murder charges when he turned up at the White House. The White House is really making no explanatory comments as to this personnel change, why it happened, or what happens next. Presumably, we will find out more about both of these dramatic developments, but it seems like we're probably not going to get any more information on these from the White House tonight. I will let you know if that changes. And then, when it comes to the Trump cabinet, there is a new scandal tonight that I find almost impossible to believe. Maybe I'm naive. Maybe I should expect everything and nothing at the same time now. But I viscerally feel like this is jaw-dropping. It was first reported by the Washington Post this afternoon, but it's interesting. The underlying evidence here, the documents that gave rise to the story in the Washington Post, were actually obtained a few weeks ago by the environmental group, the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club obtained a whole bunch of internal documents from the EPA since Scott Pruitt has been the EPA administrator. And as you know, there have been a million cajillion different scandals surrounding Scott Pruitt since he has been EPA administrator. But set that aside for a second. Pretend you have never heard about any of those other scandals. Pretend you don't even really know Scott Pruitt's name. Pretend this is the first you have ever heard that there might be any negative reporting whatsoever concerning Scott Pruitt and his time as a cabinet official. Even if this was it, even if this was the only negative news story that had ever broken about him, just ask yourself if you think it seems feasible that he still has this job tonight, after this was reported this afternoon. So it's a simple story. Scott Pruitt got sworn in to be head of the EPA in February last year, February 2017. Then March, April, May, 3 months later, May 2017, an official working for Scott Pruitt at the EPA sent this email from Sidney Hupp at EPA.gov to Dan Cathy at Chick-fil-A, which is the fast food chicken place. He's an executive at Chick-fil-A. Subject, meeting with EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt. Good afternoon, Mr. Cathy. Hopefully this email finds you well. Administrator Pruitt asked me to reach out to you and see if you might be willing to get a time set up for the two of you to have a meeting. If there's something I can work with to help get that if there's someone I can work with to help get that facilitated, I would greatly appreciate it. So this is an executive at an American fast food company getting notice from somebody who works at the EPA, sending an email from their EPA.gov email address, sending an official note that the head of the EPA wants a meeting. So this guy responds within an hour, yes, I'll take the meeting. He assigns a staffer to set it up. The staffer responds, Sidney, thank you for reaching out to schedule a conversation between Dan and Administrator Pruitt. Please let me know about any background or advance information on the visit in case Dan would like to invite another member of our team to join. Looking forward to coordinating with you further. That was sent from the Chick-fil-A offices in Atlanta. Then this EPA official writes back, hi, Evan. The administrator didn't mention a specific time, but I'll touch base with them to see if there is one. What are some good times in the coming weeks that look good for Mr. Cathy? Now, all of these emails are going back and forth in the middle of the day on weekdays. This is workday work. This is an EPA official trying to set up these meetings as part of her official duties as somebody who works at the Environmental Protection Agency, having her salary paid by you and I. Chick-fil-A writes back to her, Sidney, thank you again for coordinating further with Administrator Pruitt. I will engage further. Our Director for Regulatory and Government Affairs has rescheduled time. Thank you for your assistance. So at this point, they're bringing in further executives from the company now to be involved with the head of the EPA who has requested this meeting with their company. So now all these executives from the Chick-fil-A company are involved in trying to organize this meeting to figure out what the head of this cabinet agency wants to talk about, figuring out who needs to be there from their company in order to take this important meeting with this very high-ranking government official. And it's at this point, after a few more back and forth emails, that this official at the EPA, who's trying to set up this EPA meeting for Scott Pruitt, she finally clarifies, at least a little bit, as to what exactly this is all about. Quote, "Apologies for missing your call yesterday. The administrator would like to talk about a potential business opportunity with Mr. Cathy." And that's what this has all been about. Why is the head of the EPA on official business summoning executives from this fast food company because he says he wants to talk about a potential business opportunity? Well, we'll let the Washington Post pick up the story from there. Quote, "The call with Chick-fil-A was arranged, then canceled. Then Pruitt eventually did speak with someone from the company's legal department. Only then did he reveal the potential business opportunity that was on his mind. The potential business opportunity his staffer had referred to was a job for Scott Pruitt's wife." A representative for the Chick-fil-A company tells the Washington Post via email, quote, "The subject of that phone call was an expression of interest in his wife becoming a Chick-fil-A franchisee." Even if you had never heard of any of the other scandals afflicting Scott Pruitt, any of the other ethics disasters and the conflicts of interest and corruption scandals around Scott Pruitt since he has been in Trump's cabinet, even if the only thing you know was that he had EPA staff set up a meeting for him with officials from Chick-fil-A so he could try to get his wife a Chick-fil-A store, you would assume that he would be fired by now, right? You would assume that he would be fired by the time that this story was in print this afternoon, because as soon as somebody had to ask the White House for comment about this, you would expect that that member of the cabinet would be gone. Especially because in this case, this is not even contested information. These emails, these multiple emails, there are at least a dozen of them back and forth, where EPA staff are trying to arrange meetings and calls using their EPA.gov email addresses on weekdays during the day directly on behalf of Scott Pruitt. We've got the actual emails. There's been no suggestion from Scott Pruitt that these emails are not real. The EPA handed them over as part of a FOIA request. They're not denying the veracity of these emails. On the other side of it, Chick-fil-A, the company that was shaken down here, approached by this cabinet official in this way, the company is confirming that, yeah, this federal employee called on behalf of this cabinet officer trying to get his wife a job. It is against the law for a public official to use his or her job or the staff that support that job for the private gain of that public official. Use of public office for private gain. Section 2635.702, an employee shall not use his public office for his own private gain or for the private gain of friends, relatives, or persons with whom the employee is affiliated in a non-governmental capacity. That's illegal. You can't, even if this is Scott Pruitt trying to get his wife a Chick-fil-A franchise, right? Even if this had been Scott Pruitt sending this EPA staffer out to get his wife a Chick-fil-A sandwich, that itself would be illegal under federal law. Because in addition to not being allowed to use your public office for private gain, you also cannot have federal employees do personal favors for a public official and his or her family. It's bluntly illegal. There have been very large public scandals about much lower profile public officials in other presidencies for behavior that was not nearly this blatant or this unassailably proven. And it's ridiculous at one level. On the other hand, a Chick-fil-A franchise is a valuable thing. The company says something like 40,000 people approach the company every year inquiring about becoming a Chick-fil-A franchise owner. Of the 40,000 people who ask about that, the company only chooses about 100 people to get a franchise per year. People who want to become a Chick-fil-A franchise owner know that it is a very, very competitive thing. There's an online application. You're not supposed to have a federal cabinet official have federal government employees call to get you to the front of the line. You're supposed to fill out the online application and then beg and plead and make your best case to Chick-fil-A. 40,000 people apply, 100 get it. But in this case, Scott Pruitt just had his staff call. But then apparently he didn't follow through Back to the Washington Post, quote, Marlynn Pruitt, who is Scott Pruitt's wife, never ended up opening a Chick-fil-A restaurant. According to a representative of the company, quote, Administrator Pruitt's wife started but did not complete the Chick-fil-A franchisee application. Yeah, I bet it was hard. Much easier to just have one of Scott Pruitt's staffers call and get you a meeting down at headquarters. Did I mention that it is a cabinet official who's calling, who's requesting this meeting officially? I mean, whatever you think of Chick-fil-A, whatever you think of everything else you have heard about Scott Pruitt, on the basis of this reporting alone, how is it possible that he is still in office? Between the company's statement acknowledging that this is what he was asking for and the emails that are now published showing that he was having EPA staff ask for this on his behalf, this just seems like very blunt textbook evidence of very overt criminal behavior on the behalf of the administrator, on the behalf of this member of the cabinet. I mean, what's the defense here? I was kidding? Setting aside the issue of whether or not Scott Pruitt will ever be prosecuted for this, how is it possible that Congress has not lit up like a fireworks show over this blatant abuse of office? I mean, the obvious answer, of course, is that Congress right now is Republican-controlled, and so when it comes to behavior like this by Trump administration officials, they just don't want to know. Even so, it does seem like Scott Pruitt might even be pushing it with Republicans. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst is one of a number of farm state Republicans who are upset with Scott Pruitt anyway because that she says Scott Pruitt lied to her about the renewable fuel standard, which is an important thing for Iowa farmers. Beyond that, though, she sounded today like she was starting to get a little fed up with the ostentatious grift part of what Scott Pruitt is doing at that agency as well.
I will remain highly critical of Administrator Pruitt because not only do we disagree on the RFS, but there are a number of other transgressions that we have seen coming out of that office directly tied to Administrator Pruitt and the way he spends money, the way he misuses basically his office. My words, nobody else's, but he is about as swampy as you get here in Washington, D.C. And if the president wants to drain the swamp, he needs to take a look at his own cabinet.
He is about as swampy as you get. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst, Republican senator, calling on President Trump essentially to fire EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt today. She said as part of her remarks today that it's up to the president, but that essentially she hopes that he fires him. And in part that is about farm state senators being mad about what Scott Pruitt is doing concerning renewable fuel standards. But in part, it's also about every new scandal, including today's absolutely unbelievable Chick-fil-A grift. Watch what happened when NBC's Garrett Haake today spoke with Oklahoma Republican Senator James Inhofe about this same guy.
I want to ask you about your fellow Oklahoman, Scott Pruitt. I know a lot of the ethanol state Republicans are upset with him about these renewable fuel standards. Are you satisfied with the way he's doing his job from your perspective?
Well, I thought you were going to ask about the most recent accusation.
We can do that first. Can we talk about that? Yeah, absolutely.
First of all, I don't know that that's true.
Let's be specific on what we're talking about. This is emails that he was trying to essentially help his wife get a franchise with Chick-fil-A.
If that is true, that is not going to be served to his advantage. And it would not be a good thing. The problem is I've known him for so long, and I just can't see him doing something like that. So I'm going to assume that it's not true.
I'm gonna assume that it's not true. You know, it looks like it's true. These are the real emails where EPA staff really is working at the EPA on government time to try to get Scott Pruitt hooked up with Chick-fil-A, and we really do have an on-the-record statement from Chick-fil-A saying what that was about was him trying to get a franchise for his wife. So it's true. Senator Inhofe again saying he's deciding to assume that it is not true. It's true. And it's illegal, bluntly illegal. And it is therefore awkward for Republicans in Congress to not want to do anything about it. The only way that is likely to change, of course, is if it is no longer a Republican-controlled Congress. As I mentioned at the top, it is election night tonight. There are primaries tonight in 8 states, which means tonight we're going to be learning who will be running in the final general election contest for governor, for Senate, and for Congress. in Alabama, Mississippi, Montana, Iowa, New Mexico, New Jersey, South Dakota, and California. There's interesting races in all of those states. A lot of the attention tonight in terms of national news and controls of the national levers of power has been focused on California. Democrats in total nationwide need to flip about 25 seats from Republican control to Democratic control in order to take the majority in Congress. If they take majority in the House of Representatives, that would make Adam Schiff, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. That would make Gerald Nadler the head of the Judiciary Committee. It would presumably make Nancy Pelosi Speaker of the House. It would change everything in terms of power dynamics on Capitol Hill, and it is within Democrats' reach. They need about 25 seats. Well, Democrats nationwide are counting on a whole bunch of those 25 seats coming from California. There are 7 congressional districts that Hillary Clinton won in November 2016, but where a Republican member of Congress nevertheless holds the seat in that district. Now, there are a whole bunch of interesting dynamics in California that will determine whether or not Democrats are going to be able to get good candidates into the general election to contest those seats. We will know the answers to a lot of that tonight when polls close in California at 11 p.m. Eastern time, which is 8 p.m. local time in California. When that happens, we will start to get a first very important window into not just what's going to happen in California, but that'll be our first big window into Democrats' chances of taking the House overall in November and changing the power dynamic in Washington. So polls are still open right now in California. That's really the most important thing to be watching tonight in terms of national implications, though. But in the meantime, we have got polls closed in some states, and we've already got some interesting results starting to come in. So far, overall, this whole primary season, there's only been one sitting member of Congress who has been unseated in a primary. That's North Carolina Republican Congressman Robert Pittenger. So far, he's the only one. Well, tonight already, we are watching to see if he's going to be joined by any others. Right now, these are the results that we've got in the 2nd Congressional District in deep red Alabama. As you can see, the incumbent there, incumbent Republican Congressman Martha Roby, she's in a relatively tight battle to try to keep her seat. This is the Republican primary. It's Republicans running against her. Her challengers have been going after her for having temporarily abandoned her support for Donald Trump for a time in 2016 after the release of the Access Hollywood tape. Well, tonight, Martha Roby doesn't just need to win. She needs to clear 50% in order to avoid a runoff after tonight. We are also watching an interesting race in New Jersey, where it is the Democratic primary for U.S. Senate. The incumbent there is Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. He emerged from federal bribery charges with a hung jury, and that was only in November. Tonight, he finds himself in a tougher than expected primary against a relatively unknown opponent in New Jersey, Lisa McCormick. You see there right now. We've got 59 to 41. That's with just a little bit over a third of the vote in. We're going to have a lot more to go tonight, plus more election results, plus more news. This is going to be a big night. It's also going to be a long night, so pace yourself. Get the popcorn.
The Rachel Maddow Show is sponsored by non-drowsy 24-hour Claritin. Live Claritin Clear.
Feel the clarity of non-drowsy children's Claritin Allergy Relief, the #1 pediatrician-recommended non-drowsy brand. Because to a kid, a grassy hill is irresistible. Children's Claritin. Feel the clarity and live Claritin Clear.
You use us to keep your dirty wars at arm's length from Washington.
We believe there to be an active threat.
You threaten my wife, my children? We need you to go in and clean up the mess.
They have something on you.
Finish the job, Max, and then go home.
Deep State. Only on Epix.
Mine's way better.
This one's below market price and has Bluetooth.
Same here, but this one has leather seats.
Use the Cars.com app to compare price, features, and value.
With the Home Advisor app, it's easy and free to find home pros for any project. From a simple repair to a major remodel. Tell them what you need and get connected to top-rated local pros. Start your next project with Home Advisor.
Let's face it, everyone would love a smartphone these days, but not everyone wants unlimited everything or a large data plan with a big monthly bill. For people who just need GPS, a good camera, and a few apps, there's TracFone, the original no-contract wireless provider. Smartphone plans start as low as $15. There's no contract, and you get unlimited carryover, so you keep all the minutes, text, and data that you paid for. Right now, TracFone has phones from top brands like Samsung and LG at very affordable prices. They have large touchscreens, take great photos, and give you access to thousands of apps. Everything you need. Look, TracFone has nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. There's no activation or cancellation fees, and you can even keep your number. Talk about a win-win-win. TracFone is available at retailers nationwide. Visit TracFone.com for more information and special offers.
How do you win at business? Stay at La Quinta, where we're changing with contemporary makeovers. Then use the ultimate power handshake, the upper hander with a double palm grab. Who has the upper hand now? Start winning today. Book now at lq.com.
Allergies with sinus congestion and pressure? You won't find relief here. Go to the pharmacy counter for powerful Claritin D. While the leading allergy spray only relieves 6 symptoms, Claritin D relieves 8, including sinus congestion and pressure. Claritin D relieves more.
Hey, DirecTV customer, you do lots of this, plenty of this, and can't live without this. That's just your thing. But what about your other thing? You know, the saving money thing? We'll switch to AT&T Wireless and get $15 off your DirecTV bill for life. Plus all the talk, text, and data you can handle with no overages ever, because that's our thing. Switch to AT&T, the nation's largest and most reliable network, and get more for your thing.
We are going to start with something different tonight. This is one of those things that you have not been otherwise hearing about in the news, but stick with me.
Feed your mind with fresh perspective. Get Rachel and your favorite MSNBC shows now as podcasts.
Okay, imagine you're in this guy's shoes. First, at the end of October, special counsel unseals a 12-count indictment against Trump campaign chair Paul Manafort and his deputy campaign chair Rick Gates, charges of money laundering and conspiracy. That's the end of October. Then, in February, Robert Mueller's team adds on a whole bunch of new felony charges: bank fraud, tax fraud. They charge Manafort and Gates in a second jurisdiction on top of the charges they were already facing in D.C. Then, the very next day, Rick Gates, the guy with whom Manafort is charged with having carried out this entire scheme, including the ill-gotten gains and hiding them offshore and evading taxes and money laundering and illegal lobbying, all of it. The guy who was alleged to have done all of this, part and parcel with Paul Manafort, he flips. Rick Gates pleads guilty to just 2 counts and has all of his other troubles dry up and fly away because he agrees finally that he will start cooperating with prosecutors. Then last month, Manafort's son-in-law also flips. His son-in-law was being investigated over real estate deals that he invested in with Manafort. He, too, agrees to cooperate with federal prosecutors. Imagine what that must feel like if you're Paul Manafort. It's been a rough ride these past 8 months, right? But now it is getting significantly rougher for him. I mean, between now and September, he's looking at 2 federal trials on 23 felony charges. And his primary alleged co-conspirator is potentially giving evidence against him, as is his ex-son-in-law with whom he invested in real estate deals. How's your year been so far? His has sucked. And now it is getting worse. In the filing that we covered on this show that was filed late last night, the special counsel presents new allegations and evidence to the federal judge that's hearing Manafort's case in Washington, D.C. New allegations and evidence that Manafort has been trying to tamper with witnesses in his case. The day after Rick Gates pled guilty in February and agreed to start cooperating with prosecutors, prosecutors now say that Paul Manafort started trying to contact 2 witnesses to the scheme that was outlined in that month's indictment. Those witnesses have told the special counsel that they think Paul Manafort was trying to, quote, suborn perjury, that he was trying to coach them to give false testimony in his case. And because of that alleged witness tampering, Robert Mueller and his prosecutors are now asking the judge in Paul Manafort's case to consider putting Paul Manafort in jail now while he awaits trial. Tampering with witnesses is a crime. Even if you're not already out on bail on other charges, like Manafort is, it's a crime. And so these new serious criminal allegations against Paul Manafort create a whole new series of problems and pressures for him, right? As he considers his circumstances, as he considers whether he really wants to do this alone, or whether he, like everybody else involved in this case thus far who has been charged in the United States, whether maybe he too might want to start cooperating with prosecutors in their broader investigation. As he considers that right now, on top of all of the other pressure he was otherwise facing, now there's all this new leverage on him. Number one is what prosecutors are asking for immediately. They're saying these allegations of witness tampering, the extensive evidence they've offered to the court that Manafort, in fact, engaged in witness tampering, prosecutors say that that is reason enough for the judge to summarily order Manafort to go to jail now. He has thus far been out on bail with an ankle bracelet or two, awaiting the start of these federal criminal trials. Well, now, next week, there's going to be a new hearing in his case, and at that hearing, Manafort could be going to jail to await trial rather than enjoying being out on house arrest, as he has been since last year. On top of that new pressure, prosecutors may decide whether or not the judge concludes that these new allegations are enough to revoke bail and lock Manafort up immediately. Prosecutors may also decide that they want to add this witness tampering charge in a superseding indictment. Tampering with a witness is not just a violation of your bail terms. It is also a separate, serious crime. And so these witness tampering allegations, this evidence against him on witness tampering, this could be the basis for yet a third round of federal felony charges against Manafort. This could bring about a third indictment against him. And in addition to that, this may further create problems for Paul Manafort in terms of his existing legal representation. And that's already a source of stress. We know, or at least we think we know, because of this super sketchy website that went live last week, begging for money for Paul Manafort to pay his legal expenses. That at least seems to be an indication that Manafort is feeling some strain in terms of the cost of mounting his defense. But look at the timeline here of what prosecutors are now alleging about Manafort. They're saying that they, the prosecutors, got this evidence about the witness tampering very recently. They say they got evidence that Manafort was trying to tamper with these witnesses. They got that evidence in May, which means they could have received this evidence like last week, right? But the alleged tampering didn't happen last week. That's just when they got news that it had happened. That's just when they got the evidence. According to what prosecutors filed in court last night, the alleged witness tampering actually started in February, and it extended on for weeks into March and April. Could that now be a problem in terms of Paul Manafort's lawyers? If Paul Manafort's lawyers knew that he was contacting witnesses about their potential testimony, if his lawyers knew that their client was witness tampering, and they didn't tell the court about it, the lawyers could potentially be in trouble themselves. If they were aware that their client was committing that crime and they kept it covered up, they themselves could be in trouble. Now, if, more likely, they didn't know that Paul Manafort was doing that, if he was trying to tamper with witnesses and suborn perjury as alleged in this new filing, if he was contacting witnesses related to his case, but he was doing so without telling his lawyers and they were in the dark, well, in that case, of course, his lawyers wouldn't be in trouble themselves for trying to cover it up and not notifying the court. But even if this was happening and they didn't know about it, that also is a problem, because then there would arise the possibility that they couldn't actually stay on as his lawyers anymore. We may have already seen this play out months earlier with Rick Gates. Rick Gates pled not guilty. Ultimately, he had stood alongside Paul Manafort for a long time, right? Before he finally decided he was going to flip and plead guilty. In that time, Rick Gates went through a number of different legal teams. One of his legal teams petitioned the court to withdraw from representing him for reasons that are still publicly unknown. The lawyers cited irreconcilable differences with their client, Rick Gates, but they said that revealing more than that could be prejudicial and embarrassing to Rick Gates. In that incident, it appeared that Rick Gates' legal team had to withdraw. They petitioned the court to withdraw from being his lawyers because they found out that Gates was doing stuff they didn't know about. And so they said, okay, we can't be your lawyers anymore. Is there a possibility that Paul Manafort is going to be up against that as well? If he was tampering with witnesses and his lawyers knew, big problem for them. If he was tampering with witnesses and his lawyers didn't know, Might that be a problem in terms of them continuing to represent him? And whether or not you care about Paul Manafort, whether or not you lie awake at night worrying about Paul Manafort's stress levels, the thing that prosecutors want from him clearly is for him to cooperate with them, right? There is a mountain of charges against him in multiple jurisdictions. He's now standing alone as everybody else has decided to cooperate, including against him. There is the new threat that he will be in jail starting next week, even before he goes to trial. And now there's this huge new criminal allegation against him that is making all of those prospects worse. The only way he could alleviate all of that pressure is to either ride it out and win this fight, or he can cooperate. Tell prosecutors he'll help them with their case as they continue to investigate the Trump campaign and its ties with Russia. What are his options? How's he going to choose? Hold that thought.
Psoriatic arthritis tries to get in my way. Watch me.
I've tried lots of things for my joint pain. Now, watch me.
Think I'd give up showing these guys how it's done? Please.
Real people with active psoriatic arthritis are changing the way they fight it. They're moving forward with Cosentyx. It's a different kind of targeted biologic. It's proven to help people find less joint pain and clearer skin. Don't use if you are allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting Cosentyx, you should be checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms of an infection, or if you have received a vaccine or plan to. If you have inflammatory bowel disease, tell your doctor if symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions may occur.
With less joint pain, watch me.
For less joint pain and clearer skin, ask your rheumatologist about Cosentyx.
Mother Nature sure smells amazing, even in accounts receivable. Gain Botanico's laundry detergent. Bring the smell of nature wherever you are.
Promote what makes your business great with Vistaprint business cards. With more shapes, paper stocks, and finishes to choose from, you can create the card that's right for your business. 500 standard cards start at just $9.99 when you enter promo code 500cards at Vistaprint.com.
Legendary jockey Victor Espinoza is insatiable when it comes to competing. So is his horse. When it comes to snacking. That's why he uses the Chase mobile app to pay practically anyone at any bank. Life lived Victor's way. Chase, make more of what's yours.
Mom and Dad got a new car. It's not theirs, it's mine. Mine. And it always will be forever and ever.
The new RX 350L with 3 rows for 7 passengers. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
I got this 55-inch 4K television for just $260.
I got these 3 suitcases for less than $40.
You too can get great deals at DealDash.com, the fair and honest bidding site.
I got both of these kitchen appliances for only $252.
An iPhone 10 sold for less than $162, a camera for less than $42, and a laptop for under $63.
And shipping is always free.
Use promo code BONUS for 100 free bids with your first bid pack purchase.
What are you waiting for?
Go to DealDash.com today.
It all started with a cardboard box. It's what my colleague put his computer on when sitting all day at the office became too painful. So we designed the first Veridesk. Lift it to stand when you want to, lower it to sit when you need to.
I have more energy and I get more done.
Our boss got the company to buy them for us, and I love it.
If you sit every day for work, the Veridesk is a must.
It's sturdy and comes fully assembled. And if you don't love it within 30 days, we'll pick it up. Go to Veridesk.com to order yours.
Post office boxes come in 5 different sizes. We think the one that we made a field trip this week to see, the one right there in the middle, we have that, is a size 2. It's a size small, with room, according to the post office, for 10 to 15 letters or up to 5 magazines as long as the magazines are rolled. This is a size 2 small P.O. box. It's Specifically, the one we were there to see was P.O. Box number 2402 in the Clifton, New Jersey post office. And that exact P.O. Box, 2402, is where potential donors have been encouraged to send their checks or money orders to the Paul Manafort Legal Defense Fund. As we reported last week, this mysterious fund was set up anonymously by self-proclaimed longtime friends of the Trump campaign chairman, but it does seem to be just Paul Manafort's wife and family who are associated with this size 2 small P.O. box in Clifton. Whoever is collecting the checks and money orders and however many rolled magazines can fit inside, it would appear that Paul Manafort might increasingly need help. Before last night, he was already facing 23 felony charges in 2 separate federal jurisdictions. That was before prosecutors last night unveiled new accusations of him attempting to tamper with witnesses in his case. Joining us now is Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. attorney in the great state of Michigan. Barb, it's great to have you with us tonight. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. Always my pleasure.
So witness tampering isn't just something that prosecutors complain about for somebody who is out on bail. Witness tampering is a crime. Can you explain, just in layman's terms, what witness tampering is and why it's a crime?
Yeah, and it's considered a very serious crime. It's punishable by up to 20 years in prison. That's because it goes to the very integrity of the court system. It means that, you know, someone has tried to induce or threaten or persuade a witness to change their story, to tell a story that's not truthful. So it's a serious crime that is often charged. You know, prosecutors have a lot of discretion to choose which crimes they will and won't charge. Sometimes they let things go. Witness tampering is one they almost always charge because it goes to the very heart of what the criminal justice system is all about.
And that goes directly to my next question, which is, why isn't this brought in the form of a superseding indictment, a new set of criminal charges against Paul Manafort? Or is this, in effect, a new set of charges against Manafort? The way the prosecutors brought this to the court's attention was in a filing in which they asked the judge in the case to essentially revoke his bail, to not let him be out on supervised release anymore, to put him in jail while he's awaiting trial because of these new allegations and the evidence they gave to the court to support it. Should we effectively see that as them charging him with witness tampering, or is this a different way of handling it?
It is a different way of handling it, but it's not exclusive. It doesn't mean that they won't charge a superseding indictment, but strategically they might not here. My only concern with charging a superseding indictment at this stage is it could lead to a delay in the trial. You know, the Manafort team might say, we need additional time to prepare for these new charges. And my guess is one of the things this prosecution team wants to do is to keep the heat on Paul Manafort, to know that that trial date is getting ever closer so that he is forced to make that decision as to whether to go to trial or to work out a cooperation deal. So we still might see a superseding indictment down the road. As I said, it's a very serious charge that prosecutors usually don't let go. But maybe they considered this a different way to deal with it, bringing it to the court's attention, because one of the things you definitely want to do is to get this in front of a jury at some point, because it is evidence of what's known as consciousness of guilt. That is, I only needed to interfere with these witnesses because I was afraid that if they told the truth, I would be convicted. So I think the prosecutors absolutely want this to be part of their case in one way or another.
Barbara McQuaid, former U.S. attorney from Michigan, clear as a bell, as always. Thank you, Barb. Very helpful. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right, much more to come. Stay with us.
You like dinosaurs? So do I. Hey, Blue. I brought you something. Okay. We're getting out of here. You're welcome. This is gonna be awesome.
Rated PG-13. We all share this world. Share the same hopes and dreams. You dream of a future that respects the environment. We work on electric car batteries that last longer. Create catalytic technologies that help make the air cleaner. And find ways of making cities use less energy. You keep wishing, we'll keep innovating. It's why we're optimistic about the future. BASF, we create chemistry.
Grubhub is a delivery app that lets you order from all your favorite local restaurants. And yes, it's that easy. Grubhub, restaurants you love, delivered.
Do you ever have too much stuff to carry and no easy way to do it? With ScottyVest, those days are over. At ScottyVest, we make great-looking clothing with tons of hidden pockets and unique features. Visit ScottyVest.com and browse dozens of styles for both men and women.
If you're concerned about your heart health, or know someone who is, then you should get KardioMobile by AliveCor, the only FDA-cleared medical-grade personal EKG device that analyzes your heart rhythm in just 30 seconds and lets you send results directly to your doctor.
Atrial fibrillation is an abnormal heart rhythm that can lead to stroke. By using the KardioMobile device, we can detect atrial fibrillation.
When you feel a symptom and you feel like your heart's acting up, taking the EKG immediately and getting that reading that's normal is a huge peace of mind.
When I was first diagnosed, I worried constantly about atrial fibrillation. And with this device, I really don't even think about it anymore. I feel like I'm in control of my own heartbeat.
I went through many years where my first instinct was to go to the ER. This is my first go-to. This is my first line of defense in getting, information to my doctor.
KardioMobile puts peace of mind in your pocket for only $99. To order, visit KardioMobile.com.
Without KardioMobile, I wouldn't know when I needed help.
Booking a flight at the last minute doesn't have to be expensive. Just go to Priceline. It's the best place to book a flight a few days before my trip and still save up to 40%. Just tap and go. For the best savings on flights, go to Priceline. Come here, babe.
Nasty nighttime heartburn? Try new Alka-Seltzer PM gummies, the only fast, powerful heartburn relief plus melatonin so you can fall asleep quickly.
Oh, what a relief it is.
Last night, we had a senior ACLU lawyer here on the show talking about this new policy of the Trump administration where the federal government is now forcibly taking babies and kids away from their parents and locking them up if the family's caught crossing the border without papers. One of the ways we've been grappling with the implications of this new policy is that we've been trying to figure out what our government is doing with the babies and the kids once they take them away. On Sunday, Senator Jeff Merkley went to Brownsville, Texas, where he said a disused Walmart supercenter is now being used to house, he thinks, about 1,000 kids. He doesn't know for sure because they wouldn't let him in to see the facility, and they called the cops on him, who told him to leave. That big facility was in Brownsville, Texas. That was the old Walmart, 1,000 kids. The same senator, Senator Jeff Merkley, says that on that same trip, he also saw kids being kept in cages at a border processing facility in McAllen, Texas, which is about an hour west of Brownsville, also right on the border.
Well, the first room had a series of cages that look a lot like dog kennels in which people had recently arrived and been put into them. They were very crowded. The individuals had space blankets, so you had all these silver space blankets, no mattresses, and people looking very distressed and upset, a number of women holding children in their arms. And then adjacent to that is a very, very large warehouse with much larger cages. And in those, the children have already been separated away from the parents. There was one cage that had children who were, young boys who were being lined up for food, and they started with the smallest in front. So you had a little toddler, I don't know, he must have been 4 or 5 years old, up through youth that are 16 or 17.
So here's what we think is happening. Kids and babies have never before been ripped away from their moms and dads at the border. This is a new policy put in place by the Trump administration. In the past, obviously, there have been kids who have crossed the border illegally alone, and so the U.S. has had facilities to handle those young people, mostly teenagers. But babies and toddlers who were with their parents until the government stepped in to take them out of their mother's arms, that is new. Now, the first place we think they are taking them is to these border stations where nobody's supposed to be kept more than 72 hours. That's the kind of place where Senator Merkley says he saw kids in cages with just little foil space blankets, and that's it. After 72 hours at the most, people are supposed to be moved out of places like that at the border to these shelters, like the one that he went to at the old Walmart, these shelters that are theoretically supposed to be able to hold people for longer periods of time. But those facilities were never supposed to be taking in unaccompanied babies and toddlers. Well, now NBC News has a new exclusive report that gives us two important new pieces of information when it comes to finding these kids. Number one, NBC reports that hundreds of kids are being kept at those facilities on the border, the ones with the cages, for longer than 72 hours. It's supposed to be 72 hours max. Kids are staying there longer than that, and we're talking about hundreds of kids younger than 12. Second thing that NBC is reporting is that these kids are not being moved out of the cages and into the bigger shelters because they don't have any more room. There are over 11,000 kids being held alone in those bigger shelters, and now the backlog is apparently resulting in kids being kept locked up at the cages at the border waiting for a place. NBC also reports today that the Trump administration's plan to solve this is, at least for now, to have officials start touring Goodfellow Air Force Base, Dyess Air Force Base, and Fort Bliss to see if maybe these babies and little kids can be put there. So that's your tax dollars at work now. On orders from the president, it's now the job of some federal government employees to forcibly take babies away from their mothers, where they are first locked up in cages at the border with space blankets for comfort. If they're lucky, they might eventually get moved to a giant disused Walmart with 1,000 other kids. And since that system's breaking down, maybe military bases next?
And we welcome back Gary, who's already won 3 cars, 2 motorcycles, a boat, and an RV. I would not want to pay that insurance bill.
Oh, I have Progressive, so I just bundled everything with my home insurance. I'm saving a ton of money.
We love you, Gary! You don't have to buzz in. It's not a question, Gary. On March 1st, 1810...
Frederick Chopin.
Collapsing in 226...
The Colossus of Rhodes.
Louise Dustman.
Brahms' Lullaby, or Friegenlied.
When will it end?
Not today, Ron.
Sandals Grand Antigua was incredible.
The pool was as large as the ocean.
And the beach was perfect. But what I remember most was falling in love all over again. Sandals Grand Antigua. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
If your moderate to severe ulcerative colitis or Crohn's symptoms are holding you back, and your current treatment hasn't worked well enough, it may be time for a change. Ask your doctor about Entyvio, the only biologic developed and approved just for UC and Crohn's. Entyvio works at the site of inflammation in the GI tract and is clinically proven to help many patients achieve both symptom relief and remission. Infusion and serious allergic reactions can happen during or after treatment. Entyvio may increase risk of infection, which can be serious. PML, a rare, serious, potentially fatal brain infection caused by a virus, may be possible. This condition has not been reported with Entyvio. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, experience frequent infections, or have flu-like symptoms or sores. Liver problems can occur with Entyvio. If your UC or Crohn's treatment isn't working for you, ask your gastroenterologist about Entyvio. Entyvio, relief and remission within reach.
And done.
Someone order a bunk bed?
Done.
Oh, so you're coming this week too?
That was easy.
Don't procrastinate, don't articulate, girls get late, get it up to
Get the feeling at wayfair.com.
The blade quality you'd expect from Gillette at a price you wouldn't. The new Gillette 3 and Gillette 5. Available now for $7.99. Gillette, the best a man can get.
If our feet were our hands, everyone would instantly notice the difference Carousel Intensive Foot Repair makes on dry, cracked feet. Carousel exfoliates and repairs with visible results in 1 day. See the 1-day difference. Carousel.
You thought that bandage would protect me? See the new skin over there? How could you not know it's the flexible liquid bandage? It seals out bad stuff like water and dirt. Hey, there's a spray, too.
New skin. Apply, seal, heal. At 3 Day Blinds, we provide a design consultant to come to your house for free to help you choose the perfect draperies, blinds, or shutters for your style and budget.
I'm able to help clients create spaces that maybe they've never dreamed of.
We're helping people find function in their space.
The value, the quality, we're very, very happy with our decision.
Set up a free design consultation and get free installation at 3dayblinds.com.
And when I was at the center at McAllen Border Station, this is the processing center, earlier, and I was admitted there, and I did see the people, hundreds of children locked up in cages there at that facility.
You recently saw children being kept in cages?
When?
Yesterday morning at the McAllen border station at the processing center, they have big cages made out of fencing and then wire and nets stretched across the top of them so people can't climb out of them.
Cages first, then shelters like at old Walmarts, but those are filling up. More than 11,000 kids so far. Now NBC News reports that the Trump administration next wants to put the kids in military facilities. Joining us now is NBC News national security reporter Courtney Kuby. Courtney, thank you for joining us. This is a disturbing scoop you guys had today.
Thanks, Rachel.
So the administration seems to be pursuing this military base option simply because they need space and they need it fast?
Yes, I mean, they need federal facilities, and there are a couple of military bases that they're doing site surveys on because they just may have the space. We don't exactly know what it would look like. Would it be some large auditorium? Would it be barracks that aren't being used? Would it just be fields where they would sort of set up tents? We don't really know, but they just need the space. And of course, this comes, as you mentioned, because there's been a backlog of children, more than 11,000, because of this new Trump administration policy, which is called zero tolerance. And basically that says that anyone who comes across the border illegally will be referred for prosecution to the Department of Justice. Well, many of these people are coming across the border with children. The kids can't go to jail, so the Department of Health and Human Services takes custody of them, of their care and feeding. There's been a big influx, thousands of them, and now the border facilities where they're temporarily held, everything is filling up. They're at or near capacity, so now the federal government has to find a new place to take care of all these kids.
If they are going to put these kids in military bases, what kind of time frame are they thinking for how long they can keep kids at military sites?
So it would be while they're being held, and the government is figuring out where they can send them next. So whether it's foster care, whether they have relatives here in the United States, the average time is about 45 days. But it will really depend on what exactly the facility is like. They're looking at places mainly within a couple hundred miles of the border with Mexico, so down in Texas, with the idea that there's proximity. If they do have to send them back across the border, then they don't have far to transport them. But because there is such a backlog, it's the timeline for how long these kids are going to be held is only likely to be extended as more and more kids are sent into this processing system.
NBC News national security reporter Courtney Kuby, as I say, disturbing scoop, but congratulations on getting it. Good to see you, Courtney.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right, we'll be right back. Stay with us.
I have asthma, one of many pieces in my life. So when my asthma symptoms kept coming back on my long-term control medicine, I talked to my doctor and found a missing piece in my asthma treatment with Brio.
Once daily Brio prevents asthma symptoms. Brio's for adults with asthma not well controlled on a long-term asthma control medicine, like an inhaled corticosteroid. Brio won't replace your rescue inhaler for sudden breathing problems. Brio is specifically designed to open up airways to improve breathing for a full 24 hours. Brio contains a type of medicine that increases the risk of death from asthma problems and may increase the risk of hospitalization in children and adolescents. Brio is not for people whose asthma is well controlled on a long-term asthma control medicine, like an inhaled corticosteroid. Once your asthma is well controlled, your doctor will decide if you can stop Brio and prescribe a different asthma control medicine, like an inhaled corticosteroid. Do not take Brio more than prescribed. See your doctor if your asthma does not improve or gets worse.
Ask your doctor if 24-hour Brio could be a missing piece for you.
See if you're eligible to pay no more than $10 a month.
Looking for a hotel that fits your budget? TripAdvisor now searches over 200 sites to find you the hotel you want at the lowest price. Grazie, Gino. Find a price that fits. TripAdvisor.
Mine's way better.
This one's below market price and has Bluetooth. Same here, but this one has leather seats.
Use the Cars.com app to compare price, features, and value.
I know who you are. The attorney whose family they killed.
Not they.
My father. Now you hunt them.
Adios.
And this girl was witness to the mission.
You gotta get rid of her. I can't do that. Some bad people hunting for you now. You have no reason to trust me. But trusting me is how you're gonna survive.
Sicario, Day of the Soldado, rated R.
8 states are holding primaries tonight, with a lot of the national focus on California, where Democrats are hoping to get Democratic challengers in place to try to flip a whole bunch of congressional seats in that state from red to blue. Californians are still voting right now. Polls close at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. local time in California. And here's a pickle already. Almost 119,000 voters were, quote, accidentally left off L.A. County polling place rosters. Los Angeles County, more than 5 million voters there. The county registrar says 100,000 plus names were left off the roster due to a printing error. This mistake in L.A. County has reportedly affected about 35% of precincts in the county. Voters whose names are inexplicably missing from the voting rolls and people turn up to vote, they're being told not to worry. They're being told to file a provisional ballot, which officials say will be counted. But that is obviously setting some nerves on edge tonight in California as we continue to watch results roll in around the country. That does it for now, but lots of primary coverage to come tonight. Now it's time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. And, you know, I couldn't watch every minute of your show tonight because I do have to do some homework for this hour. So I'm not sure how much time, how much of your hour was spent on the winners of the Super Bowl and the president and the national anthem, which I believe the president thinks is the biggest story of the day.
You know, it's where does the time go?
So what? So what? Zero? Nothing? Like no?
I don't always cover things that are the things that the president is doing.
Oh.
Ever.
Oh, that's a choice.
I don't ever cover the president.
That's a choice we can make. We can actually make that choice.
I believe in, you know, the presidency is a very important thing. And the president, by virtue of the fact that he is the inhabitor of the presidency, is important. But you also